Welcome to another AP Human Geography topic walkthrough, brought to you by Mr. Michael, Social Studies teacher. This video is here to help you fill out your lecture notes, understand the big ideas, and maybe even laugh once or twice. So grab your notes and let's get started.
Agriculture did not just glow up, it had a full main character transformation arc. Look at this background. On one side, horse-powered manual labor were doing this by hand energy. On the other side, tractors, mechanized harvesters, irrigation systems spraying like crops or at a hydration spa. That right there is the plot twist of this entire unit. In 5.4, we're talking about the second agricultural revolution, when farming linked up with the industrial revolution and said, bet, let's mass produce. New machines, higher yields, surplus food, and surplus food meant better diets, longer life expectancy, and suddenly way more people available to clock in at factories. Farming didn't just grow crops, it built cities. Then 5.5 hits with the Green Revolution in the 1950s and 1960s. Scientists said, what if we upgrade the seeds? High-yield grains, hybridization, GMOs, fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation, food production skyrockets in parts of Latin America and Asia. Hunger drops, prices fall. But the environment, kind of stressed. Water pollution, soil erosion, inequality. It's giving solution creates new problems. Before we start breaking down all the tea, let's make sure we know exactly what you're expected to master by the end of this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you are not just knowing stuff. You are explaining it like a geography mastermind. First, you need to explain the advances and impacts of the second agricultural revolution. That means you understand how new technology boosted food production. More food meant better diets. Better diets meant longer life expectancy. Longer life expectancy meant population growth. And when fewer people were needed on farms because of mechanization, boom, more workers available for factories. Agriculture basically said, congrats, Industrial Revolution, I brought you employees. Then we shift to the Green Revolution. Your job is to explain its consequences on food supply and the environment in the developing world. This era was powered by chemicals, mechanized farming, irrigation, hybrid seeds, and genetically modified organisms. Food production increased dramatically in many regions. Hunger dropped in places like Latin America and South Asia. But at the same time, fertilizer runoff polluted water, soil erosion increased, and environmental sustainability started looking a little stressed. So you're analyzing both sides, the wins and the consequences. Big picture thinking only. But before tractors, fertilizers, and GMOs entered the chat, humans had to figure out farming for the very first time. Humans really said, walking around hunting stuff is exhausting. What if we just grow it? This is the first agricultural revolution. Back in the Neolithic era, around 12,000 to 10,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent. That region becomes the agricultural main stage. Instead of being nomadic hunter-gatherers, people start domesticating plants and animals. That means they intentionally grow crops and raise animals instead of just chasing them around. Massive lifestyle shift. Look at the image on the right. Those tools? Simple. Handheld, manual. Grinding stones, basic blades, wooden handles, no engines, no steel machines, just human muscle. That's how farming started. This era is also dominated by subsistence farming. Farmers grow food mainly for their own families, not for profit. You grow it, you eat it, no global shipping, no supermarkets, just survival. And even though it started in the Fertile Crescent, agriculture diffused over time through trade routes and later through exchanges between continents. The idea spreads. Farming becomes the foundation of civilization. But fast forward thousands of years, and farming is about to get a serious technology upgrade in Great Britain. In 1750, Great Britain basically said, what if farming, but faster? This is the second agricultural revolution. It starts in Great Britain and then diffuses into Europe and the United States. And the big reason, the Industrial Revolution, technology enters the farm chat. Look at the images on the right. That cotton gin? That machine separates cotton fibers way faster than human hands ever could. The seed drill below it? Instead of randomly tossing seeds and hoping for the best, it plants them evenly and efficiently. Add in the steel plow and barbed wire, and suddenly farming becomes mechanized. That word matters. Mechanization means machines replace human labor. And the results? High yields. More crops grown per acre. That creates a surplus of food. Surplus food leads to population growth and longer life expectancy because more people are actually eating enough. But here's the twist. More technology means less manual labor. Fewer farmers are needed. So the number of agricultural workers drops. And when fewer people are needed on farms, something major is about to happen to land ownership and cities. Land in Great Britain was about to get fenced off, literally. The enclosure movement was a series of laws that allowed wealthy landowners to take over common land that peasant farmers had been using. That shared land? Gone. Now it's privately owned, enclosed, and controlled. Look at the image on the right with the patchwork fields. That's what enclosure looks like. Clearly defined property lines instead of open communal space. And those fence graphics at the bottom, that's the visual metaphor. Boundaries everywhere. If you remember meets and bounds, this is that energy on steroids. This shift led to the emergence of commercial agriculture. Farming was no longer mainly about feeding your own family. It became about producing crops for profit. Farms became fewer but larger. Bigger farms meant more efficient techniques, but it also meant fewer farm owners and fewer agricultural laborers. And when people lose access to land and jobs in rural areas, they migrate. Urbanization explodes as former farm workers move into cities to work in factories. So mechanization increases production. Enclosure restructures land ownership. And together they completely reshape population patterns. Now let's look at how farming techniques themselves became smarter and more efficient. Farming did not just get smarter, it got strategic. One major upgrade during the Second Agricultural Revolution was crop rotation. Look at the diagram on the right. Tomatoes one year, onions the next, then beans, then cabbage. Instead of planting the same crop over and over until the soil is exhausted, farmers rotate crops to protect soil fertility. Some plants pull nutrients out. Others, like legumes, help put nitrogen back in. It's basically giving the soil a recovery arc. And the result? Increased crop yields, healthier soil, even experimentation with fertilization techniques to boost production even more. Then transportation enters the chat. Trains and steamboats allow farmers to ship products farther and at a lower cost. That means access to new markets. Farming is no longer just local. It becomes regional and even global. Agriculture is officially connected to industrial systems and trade networks. But while Europe and the United States were upgrading farming in the 1700s and 1800s, the 20th century faced a different problem entirely: explosive population growth in developing regions. The 1950s and 1960s really said, okay, we need more food, immediately. This is the Green Revolution. It begins in the mid-20th century, and the timing is not random. Massive population growth is happening, especially in developing regions of the world. More people means more pressure on food supply. The stakes? Extremely high. Look at the image on the right. That's Norman Borlaug. This man becomes a key figure in this movement. He travels to Mexico and works on improving agricultural and biotechnological techniques so crops can produce more food. The goal is simple, but huge. Prevent famine and feed a rapidly growing global population. And this research does not stay in one place. It diffuses from more developed countries into developing regions, especially Latin America and parts of Asia. Knowledge, technology, and new farming methods spread internationally. The world had already seen mechanization during the Second Agricultural Revolution, but this time, science and biology are about to take center stage in a whole new way. This is where the Green Revolution really starts flexing. Look at the graph on the right. Cereal yields, tons per hectare, shoot up in East Asia and South Asia over time. That is not a tiny increase. That is a glow-up. Meanwhile, sub-Saharan Africa rises much more slowly. Right away, you can see the impact is uneven. Now let's break down the upgrades. Scientists develop higher-yielding, disease-resistant, faster-growing varieties of grains like rice, corn, and wheat. Basically, crops that work harder and grow faster. Then we get hybrids and genetically modified organisms, seeds engineered for maximum productivity. Farming enters its biotech era. Next, double cropping. growing more than one crop per year on the same land. No off-season. The soil is on a year-round grind. And then the chemicals show up. Increased use of fertilizers, pesticides, irrigation systems, and machinery in developing countries. Farming becomes highly mechanized and highly intensified. More output, more speed, more production. And when yields start climbing like that, the global food supply is about to change in a very big way. The Green Revolution did not just increase food, it flipped the script. Look at the graph on the right showing India. Grain production climbs hard over time, while grain imports drop. That means India moves towards self-sufficiency. That is a massive shift. Instead of relying heavily on outside food, the country produces more of its own. Higher yields on the same amount of cultivated land. That is the key flex. Farmers are not necessarily getting more land. They are getting more output per hectare. And when yields increase, surplus happens. Surplus sustains population growth. Surplus allows countries to begin exporting crops. Exports bring in more wealth. More wealth funds better farming technology. Better technology leads to even more crops. It becomes a feedback loop. In regions like Latin America, South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, this leads to greater food security and, in many cases, self-sufficiency. Food prices drop, access increases, more people can afford to eat. It is giving we solved a global crisis. But when you boost production that fast, using that many chemicals and that much irrigation, the environment is about to feel it. Here's the part nobody posts on the highlight reel. Yes, the Green Revolution boosted food production, but it also came with environmental consequences. Mass use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides sounds efficient, but when it rains, runoff happens. Those chemicals wash into local water systems, rivers, lakes, groundwater, polluted. Ecosystems get disrupted, habitats damaged, animals poisoned. It's not just crops being affected. Then think about intensive double cropping and aggressive irrigation. When land is constantly producing with very little recovery time, soil erosion increases. Salinization can happen when irrigation leaves salt behind in the soil. Over time, that soil becomes less productive. The same land that was boosted starts degrading. Add more machinery into the system, and you get more fossil fuel use. That means air pollution, water pollution, and even noise pollution. Industrial-level farming leaves a carbon footprint. And then there's loss of biodiversity. When farms focus on a few high-yield varieties, traditional crops and local species decline. Less genetic diversity means less resilience long-term. The Green Revolution fed millions, that's real. But when production rises that fast, sustainability becomes a serious question. And environmental impacts weren't the only unintended consequences. Some social inequalities actually deepened. New tech dropped, but the invite list was not equal. Before the Green Revolution, in many developing countries, women were heavily involved in farming. They were planting, harvesting, managing fields, full main character energy in agriculture. Then the Green Revolution shows up with high-yield seeds, fertilizers, irrigation systems, and machinery. And who gets trained? Mostly male heads of households. Look at the graphic on the right. That yield gap between men and women farmers, about 20 to 30%, is not about skill. It is about access. Access to land, access to credit, access to tools, access to information. If women had the same resources as men, total agricultural output in developing countries could increase by several percent. That big circle at the bottom shows it could reduce global undernourishment by millions of people. Millions. So the irony? The Green Revolution was designed to fight hunger, but limiting women's access to resources meant production was not reaching its full potential. Women were often excluded from learning new techniques and from having decision-making power because of economic and social inequality. Production went up overall, yes, but gender inequality in some places deepened. The crops upgraded, the systems modernized. But the power structures? Not so much. And when we zoom out to entire regions, especially across Africa, the uneven impact becomes even clearer. Everyone else is leveling up their crops, and Africa's like, wait, this patch doesn't work on my map? First off, Africa is not one climate. It's not copy-paste farmland. Some regions are dealing with brutal droughts. Others have unpredictable rainfall. Some soils are straight up exhausted. The high-yield wheat and rice varieties? They were basically designed for very specific, well-irrigated environments. Translation: they thrived in parts of Asia, but not everywhere in Africa. Now look at that production graph. Notice how the line isn't skyrocketing like in South Asia? That's not because farmers weren't trying. It's because the system around them wasn't built to support the upgrade. Infrastructure matters. If you grow more crops but don't have solid roads, storage, transportation, or reliable markets, congrats, you just unlocked spoilage. And here's a big one: the crops themselves. The Green Revolution focused heavily on wheat and rice. But many African regions rely on sorghum, millet, cassava, yams, and cowpeas. Those crops were not the main characters in the genetic research era, so imagine everyone else getting the premium seed package, and your staple foods barely getting a mention. And then there's government investment. Irrigation systems, fertilizer access, training programs, all of that takes serious funding and coordination. Without it, even good technology can't fully cook. So what's the takeaway? The Green Revolution wasn't a universal cheat code. Same global idea, very different results depending on environment, infrastructure, crop focus, and policy support. Technology can open the door, but if the system isn't ready, it's giving update failed. Now we've officially seen the wins, the losses, and the uneven rollout. Time to connect it all. Quick rewind. The Second Agricultural Revolution kicked off in Great Britain around 1750. Mechanization entered the chat. Seed drills, steel plows, the cotton gin. Farming went from slow and manual to industrial upgrade. Crop rotation kept soil fertile. Enclosure laws created larger commercial farms. Fewer farmers were needed, more food was produced, and boom, urbanization started rising because people moved to cities for factory jobs. Agriculture got more efficient, population increased, and the Industrial Revolution basically said, thanks for the boost. Then fast forward to the Green Revolution in the 1950s and 60s. This time it's about science, higher yield, disease-resistant crops, hybrid seeds, GMOs, double cropping, massive fertilizer and irrigation use. Yields skyrocketed in places like South Asia and Latin America. Some regions became more food secure and even started exporting crops. But it wasn't all sunshine and wheat fields. Environmental damage, pollution, soil erosion, biodiversity loss, and unequal access. Especially in parts of Africa where infrastructure, investment, and crop research didn't match local needs. So now that your brain is warmed up, your neurons are activated, and it's time to level up and test if you were actually paying attention or just vibing with the baby meme energy. Here's the real thinker. To what extent did the Green Revolution reduce global food insecurity, and how did its environmental and social consequences limit its long-term success? This is not a list 3 facts and vibe question. You need receipts. You need evidence. You need to talk about higher yields, food surpluses, and self-sufficiency in places like South Asia. But you also need to bring up soil erosion, water pollution, loss of biodiversity, gender inequality, and why Africa did not benefit the same way. Was it a net positive? Was it uneven development in action? Did it solve one problem while creating 5 more? Drop your answer in the comments and back it up with examples. And don't forget to add your name for that bonus point. All right, go earn it.